You've found nightfall murmurs. When day fades into silence, the world begins to whisper. Some stories come as murmurs, some as warnings, but they all come at night. Don't be afraid to listen, but never listen alone. The first time I glimpsed motion among the leaning monuments of Willow Creek necropolis, I chalked it up to another courier cutting through. Seemed logical. Who else would navigate that boneyard labyrinth at 11:30 on a Tuesday night? But delivery jockeys don't possess that kind of impossible velocity, nor do their boots leave impressions quite like that. 3 years I've spent chasing the nocturnal dollar, piloting deliveries through deserted streets. The compensation, sweetened by gratuities, justifies the vampire hours. That Tuesday began unremarkably. A thermal bag brimming with orders from Spice Orchid, the trendy new downtown eatery, destined mostly for bleary-eyed university students drowning in finals prep. My navigation app, stubbornly cautious, kept proposing routes skirting Willow Creek, tacking an infuriating 10 minutes onto each run. After the third such detour, impatience won. Time was money. I swung the wheel towards the cemetery shortcut. Plenty of drivers did. Those wrought iron gates, relics of some 1843 preservation mandate, perpetually yawned open. A slender track, barely a road, snaked between tilted granite slabs and weathered obelisks. My headlamp sliced through the gloom, briefly illuminating names eroded nearly to oblivion, casting the elongated specters of iron crucifixes and stone seraphim across the sere, brown grass. I eased my ancient sedan over the rutted path, mindful of the shocks. My Corolla suspension, fragile even in its youth, protested every bump across its 140,000-mile history. The cabin swam with the fragrant steam of Pad See Ew and Penang curry emanating from the passenger seat. A hunger pang resonated low in my gut. Perhaps a cancelled order would yield some leftover Tom Kha Gai. Midway through the necropolis, a flicker snagged the corner of my eye. Shadow play, I assumed initially, my own lights dancing wickedly on stone. Then, stark clarity, a silhouette, fluid and impossibly swift, darting between the rows of markers. It traversed 50 feet of open ground in less time than it took my eyelids to meet. My foot slammed the brake pedal. Takeout containers surged forward, thudding against the dashboard. I peered through the windshield, eyes straining to recapture the runner. Stillness reigned, save for the wind sighing through skeletal branches. "Just fatigued," I murmured, the words tasting like self-deception. Mind's fabricating phantoms. Double shifts all week, covering for a sick colleague. Sleep deprivation conjures strange apparitions. I nudged the accelerator, pushing the Corolla a little harder now. Escape velocity from this place felt suddenly crucial. Gaze locked rigidly ahead. Ignore the graves. Ignore the peripheral dance of shadows. Just drive. Another flash, passenger side this time. A blur, unnaturally rapid, like footage fast-forwarded. The steering wheel jumped in my hands. I narrowly avoided kissing a marble angel wing. A frantic drumbeat commenced against my ribs. Looking was involuntary this time. Bathed in the crimson wash of my tail lights, a sequence of tracks marred the dew-kissed turf. They arrowed directly towards my car, halting mere feet from the passenger door. Deep indentations, gouged as if by someone sprinting with inhuman force. Gas pedal met floor. The engine shrieked a high, thin complaint as I surged down the narrow cemetery lane. Suspension be damned. My mirrors offered only receding monuments and deepening darkness, punctuated by the fading ruby glow of my lights. The remainder of the shift dissolved into a haze. Deliveries executed on numb autopilot, customer interactions barely registering. By the time the final order was dispatched at 2 a.m., I'd almost managed to reclassify the cemetery incident as a figment of exhaustion. Sleep plays cruel tricks. I pointed the Corolla homeward, religiously adhering to the longer route around Willow Creek. No more shortcuts, not tonight. The asphalt ribbons were desolate, save for the occasional lumbering semi. My eyelids felt weighted with lead. 15 minutes more to sanctuary, to bed. A few blocks shy of my apartment, the fuel light blinked insistently. The fluorescent glare of the quick stop felt sterile, accusatory. Mine was the only vehicle. Inside, the night clerk remained engrossed in his phone's glow, oblivious. Back beside my car, refueling, a detail froze the blood in my veins. Muddy footprints patterned the passenger side of my Corolla. Not splashed, but distinct prints. They began inches from the door handle, tracing a path along the car's flank, parallel to my direction of travel, as if someone had run alongside me. The mud was a distinctive reddish clay hue, identical to the soil within Willow Creek necropolis. Numbly, I circled the vehicle, tracing the impossible trail. They followed the car's contour precisely to the rear bumper, then simply ceased, vanished. My hand trembled as I fumbled with the driver's side door. The car's interior held a new scent beneath the fading perfume of Thai spices, an undercurrent, musty and telluric, redolent of damp earth and decaying leaves. The drive home was executed at the exact speed limit, knuckles white on the steering wheel. Each red light stretched into an eternity, my gaze flicking constantly to the mirrors, searching the vacant streets behind. Pulling into my apartment complex's lot, I bolted from the car, sprinting indoors without a backward glance. Sleep offered no refuge. Every drift towards unconsciousness was shattered by the imagined echo of footfalls pounding past my second-story window. Around 4, oblivion finally claimed me, albeit shallow and fraught with unease. Morning lent a surreal, dreamlike quality to the previous night. The muddy prints remained embossed on my car's paintwork, though somehow less overtly menacing under the flat light of day. Rational explanations queued up. A juvenile prank during a delivery stop. Mud flicked up by another vehicle. Sheer coincidence. My phone vibrated. A text from my dispatcher. Short-staffed again tonight, Leo. Need you covering late shift. Pays time and a half. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. Prudence screamed refusal, demanded rest, distance, but rent loomed, and premium pay was a powerful siren call. Okay, I typed back, fingers moving with detached agency. I'm in. Dusk painted the sky bruised purple as I pulled into the Spice Orchid lot. A new directive echoed in my mind. Absolutely no traversing Willow Creek necropolis, regardless of time saved. Main arteries only, well-illuminated paths. The initial hours passed uneventfully. The usual rhythm of student pad thai orders, families seeking spring rolls and massaman curry. I adhered strictly to the brightly lit boulevards, swatting away the GPS's insistent suggestions for the cemetery shortcut. The detours bled time, eroded efficiency, but peace of mind felt like a fair trade. Around 10:30, an order pinged, an address situated squarely on the far side of Willow Creek. Even the circuitous route promised a 20-minute delay. The customer had already phoned twice, impatience bleeding through the connection. I sat idling, staring at the glowing map. 7 minutes through the necropolis, 27 minutes around. An irate customer, a plummeting satisfaction rating. Too many of those, and the algorithm demoted you, starved you of lucrative runs. This is absurd, I vocalized into the empty car. It's just geography, stones and dirt. Last night was fatigue, nothing more. Before logic could mount a counter-argument, I yanked the wheel, turning onto the shadowed lane leading towards Willow Creek's gaping maw. The entrance felt different tonight. More profound darkness clung to the familiar ironwork, shadows stretching like skeletal fingers in my headlights. Passing through the gates triggered a distinct pressure shift in my ears, the kind you feel ascending a steep mountain pass. Eyes forward, glued to the crumbling asphalt ribbon. Don't look left, don't look right, just drive. Expedite passage. Halfway through, my phone signal flatlined. The GPS screen went dark. Perfect, just bloody perfect. The route was etched in memory, navigable without electronic aid, but the sudden isolation prickled my nerves. The track curved sharply around a hulking marble mausoleum. As I rounded the bend, my headlights illuminated something that forced a panicked stomp on the brakes. Footprints, scores of them, perhaps hundreds, latticing the dirt road before me. Deeply impressed, as if stamped by something moving at blinding speed. And they were fresh, utterly fresh. Reverse gear engaged, delivery time be damned, rating be damned, I needed out. Now, the engine screamed, tires spitting gravel, but the car remained stubbornly stationary. Wheels spun uselessly. A glance in the rearview mirror sent ice water through my system. More footprints materialized on the road behind me, blooming from the earth itself, appearing sequentially, rapidly closing the distance to my rear bumper. A scream lodged silent in my throat. The prints reached the car. Then, impossibly, they began appearing alongside the driver's side, racing towards the front. Movement flickered at the edge of my vision. Slowly, fighting every primal urge to clamp my eyes shut, I turned my head. A face pressed against my window, humanoid yet utterly wrong. Skin the color of old parchment, sunken tight against bone. Eyes like polished obsidian, utterly devoid of white, and the mouth stretched into a ghastly, impossibly wide rictus, displaying far too many needle-sharp teeth. I slammed the gearshift into drive, flooring the accelerator. Tires bit, found purchase, launched the Corolla forward. In the side mirror, a figure sprinted alongside the car, keeping pace effortlessly. My speedometer climbed, 40, 50, 60 miles. The figure's locomotion was jerky, unnatural, legs pumping like pistons in manic overdrive, arms flailing at grotesque angles. Yet it mirrored my velocity exactly, a horrifying outrider glued to my flank. 70 miles per hour as I blew through the cemetery gates. The instant I crossed the threshold, The figure vanished, ceased to exist between one heartbeat and the next. My rearview mirror showed only Willow Creek receding into the night, serene and undisturbed between its stones. My phone sprang back to life, the GPS recalibrating my position. The pressure in my ears equalized. The mundane sounds of the city filtered back. Distant sirens, a barking dog, the low thrum of power lines. I veered into the first gas station lot I saw, engine idling, body racked with tremors for a full 20 minutes. When courage returned enough to inspect the car, fresh footprints traced the driver's side, starting at the rear bumper, ending precisely at the front wheel. Well, the mud glistened, still wet. I called the dispatcher, fabricated a family emergency, said I was done for the night. His irritation was palpable but irrelevant. I drove straight home, sticking religiously to major roads. Every stoplight was a torment. Mirrors scanned obsessively for loping figures in the periphery. That was 3 nights ago. I haven't returned to work. The dispatcher's calls go unanswered. The footprints remain etched onto my car's paint. I lack the fortitude to wash them away. Sometimes, deep in the night, I hear it. The unmistakable cadence of running footsteps outside my apartment. Swift footsteps, too swift. Found a new job today. Stocking shelves, daytime hours. The pay cut stings, but the trade-off is survival. No more nocturnal journeys near Willow Creek Necropolis. Yet the truly terrifying part, notifications still pop up from the delivery app, despite its deletion from my phone. Phantom orders, always to addresses just beyond the cemetery. The suggested route invariably bisects Willow Creek. And sometimes, very late, I see my Corolla's headlights flare to life on their own in the parking lot below. Something latched onto me in that boneyard. Something that runs far too fast and smiles far too wide. Something that demands my return. I'm writing this because someone has to know. Perhaps another driver has witnessed it. Perhaps someone understands what it is, how to sever its connection. All I know for certain is this: avoid Willow Creek Cemetery after dark. Take the long way. Always. The extra minutes are a small price to pay, because the thing that sprints between those graves isn't remotely human, and once it sees you, it never lets go. I hear them now, outside my window, running. I'm on the 2nd floor. They're getting closer. What ruptured the quiet wasn't thunder, but static, an abrasive shriek tearing through the car's speakers, obliterating the mellow guitar solo that had been my companion for nearly 3 hours. It clawed like a nest of furious hornets. My fingers fumbled with the radio dial, searching the frequencies for refuge, finding only an unrelenting wall of white noise, and then slicing through the electronic blizzard, sharp and intimate. "Ethan!" My hand recoiled from the dial as if burned. The voice, a near whisper, held a chilling gentleness that raised the fine hairs along my arms. A glance at the dashboard clock confirmed the ungodly hour, 2:37 a.m. Beyond the cone of my headlights lay only an obsidian ribbon of Arizona highway, swallowed by the vast, indifferent desert. Cacti stood like skeletal sentinels on either side, their moon-cast shadows twisting into grotesque shapes. Not another soul shared this road. The last flicker of humanity had been a desolate gas station 40 minutes back, where I'd fueled up and grabbed coffee. The roomy-eyed attendant had offered a peculiar, lingering gaze when I'd mentioned heading east on Route 60. The static persisted, a frantic energy filling the small space, but the voice withheld itself. I fiddled with the antenna, a useless gesture. A sudden thirst tightened my throat. My coffee cup sat accusingly empty in its holder. Then the whisper returned, amplified, insistent. "Ethan, listen." Instinct slammed my foot onto the brake. The tires bit into the asphalt with a gravelly sigh as the car slowed. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. My phone. I needed my phone, needed the anchor of another human voice, even a recorded one, to dispel the rising tide of unreality. Shifting into park on the dusty shoulder, I snatched the device from the cup holder. Its screen flared to life, displaying a single defiant bar of signal, and beneath it, a notification for an unsent message. A cold fist clenched in my gut as I registered the sender, my own number. With fingers that felt disconnected from my brain, I tapped the screen. The message read simply, "Don't stop, timestamped 1 minute prior." I hadn't laid a hand on the phone for hours. I stared, locked onto the glowing characters, my breathing shallow and ragged. The radio static abruptly surged, thickening, and through its churning depths, the whisper coiled again. "Ethan, behind you." Every nerve ending screamed. My gaze shot to the rearview mirror. Blackness stared back. Then, far down the highway, twin pinpricks of light ignited, swelling rapidly, hurtling towards me. Panic seized me. I slammed the gear shift into drive, stomped the accelerator. The engine screamed in protest as I fishtailed back onto the tarmac. The lights in the mirror ballooned, closing the distance with terrifying speed. My phone vibrated against my palm. Another dispatch from myself. "Faster!" The needle climbed past 80, nudged 90. Still, the lights clung to my bumper, impossibly bright, bleaching the mirror in a blinding white glare, revealing nothing of the vehicle they belonged to. The radio static warped, ascending into a piercing high-frequency whine. Fractured words bled through the noise, disjointed whispers. "Coming, can't let, find you." Sweat slicked my grip on the steering wheel. The highway stretched before me, an endless, featureless void under the cold moonlight. No exits, no turn-offs, no other travelers. Just me, the suffocating dark, and the relentless presence behind. The phone buzzed anew. "Take the next right." A strangled laugh escaped me, harsh and unfamiliar. "There is no right!" Nothing but unforgiving desert terrain waited beyond the shoulder. Taking a right meant plowing into rock and thorn, a wreck in the wilderness. As if in answer, the pursuing headlights flared, an incandescent nova that forced me to wrench my gaze away from the mirrors. The pursuing engine roared, a deep-throated growl I felt vibrating through the floorboards, up my spine. And then I saw it, something that froze the marrow in my bones. Ahead, a rupture in the guardrail, and leading away from it, a dirt track snaking north into the desert gloom. A track I would stake my life hadn't existed seconds before. The phone vibrated, a final command. "Now!" I hauled the wheel to the right. Tires screamed in protest as the car slewed sideways, threatening to break free. Miraculously, it held the turn, lurching violently onto the dirt path. My teeth slammed together. In the rearview mirror, a fleeting glimpse. The blinding headlights shot past the turnoff, continuing their eastward trajectory down the highway, without pause, without deviation. I pressed on along the rutted track, adrenaline still singing in my veins. After a mile or so, the sheer absurdity forced me to slow, then stop. The engine ticked, a cooling metal counterpoint to the sudden, profound silence. The radio was dead, not even static whispered now. One last vibration from the phone. "Get out! Walk 100 steps north. Bring the phone." For a long moment, I remained cemented to the driver's seat, hands welded to the wheel. Every rational fiber screamed retreat, back to the highway, towards the illusion of safety. Yet I opened the door and stepped out into the crisp, cold desert night. My shoes crunched on the gravel path. Guided by the stark moonlight, I walked north, counting each step aloud like an incantation. Shadows stretched long and sharp from every stone, every skeletal bush. 98, 99, 100. There, thrust into the unforgiving earth, stood a small wooden cross, weathered to a pale, ghostly grey. Affixed to it, shielded by a plastic sleeve, was a slip of paper. My hand trembled as I drew it free. A newspaper clipping, dated precisely 1 year into the future. Headline: Body of missing man found on Route 60. Ethan Vance, 34, identified as hit-and-run victim. Beneath it, scrawled in familiar handwriting, my Mew handwriting. Tried to warn myself last time. Didn't work. Maybe this time changes things. My phone pulsed again, displaying not a received message but a draft. Never sent. Dated 1 year ago. They won't stop until they find someone better, the cross Sassal, than the morgue. Leave this for the next Ethan. Keep driving west. Don't look back. I stood paralyzed in the vast darkness, the paper fluttering in my grasp, as the distant thrum of engines swelled anew from the highway. Headlights swept the horizon, searching. Galvanized by primal fear, I sprinted back to the car, gravel spitting beneath my feet. The engine caught instantly, a small miracle. I spun the car around, pointing it west along the dirt track, away from the highway, away from the searching lights. The radio remained mute. The phone stayed dark. Driving through the pre-dawn chill, my mind raced, grappling with the ghost of the Ethan who left that cross, the one who became a headline. I drove until the first hint of dawn bruised the eastern sky, finally pulling into a nondescript town deep in California. Checked into a motel, slept 12 dreamless hours, woke, wrote everything down, every terrifying detail, sealed it in an envelope addressed to myself, marked open in 11 months, and dropped it in a mailbox. That was 3 weeks ago. Night driving is now unthinkable. Empty highways, desert roads, forbidden territories. Sometimes, reflexively, I check my phone for phantom messages from my own number. Silence, so far. The envelope is somewhere in the postal system, 10 months from its destination. Will I need its contents? I don't know. But the image of that lonely cross burns behind my eyes. I think of the Ethan who put it there, and the one before him who didn't escape. I wonder, is another Ethan out there now, cruising down Route 60 under a canopy of indifferent stars? Will he hear the static bloom? Will his name be whispered? Will he heed the impossible warnings when they come? Yesterday, I bought a different car. I made damn sure it didn't have a radio. The echo, that's what lodges itself deepest. Footfalls where only stillness should reside. My name is Silas, custodian of nocturnal quietude at a cavernous depot for building supplies, marooned in the city's frayed industrial hem. My duties are stark: trace the perimeter's weary fence line, verify the integrity of locks, ensure the hulking entrance gate remains impassive. Most nights dissolve into a predictable tableau of silence, punctuated only by the scratch of my pen in the logbook, noting trivialities until the shift surrenders to dawn. For months, this stark rhythm held sway. The vast emptiness was a cloak, not a cage. I am not built for crowds, and the long stretches of solitude were less burden than balm. Leaning against the cold metal of the entrance post, watching the distant, indifferent glimmer of factory lights, I found a peculiar sort of peace. Then came the night the silence fractured. Now, the approach to each shift is a tightening wire in my gut. Relaxation is a forgotten country. 10 o'clock bleeds into the evening sky as I arrive. Anemic security lamps cast long, skeletal shadows across the gravel expanse and concrete slabs, barely illuminating the main gate. The warehouse itself yawns, a cathedral of corrugated metal and echoing heights, fed by rumbling trucks during the day, falling utterly mute after 6. My sanctuary, such as it is a cramped office near the front, housing the essentials: a thermos of rapidly cooling coffee, a heavy-duty flashlight, and the control panel displaying the grainy narratives from antiquated security cameras. The surveillance system is rudimentary, a relic. A scattering of lenses monitors the loading docks and threads along a couple of interior corridors, feeding their monochrome visions to a small screen. Motion sensors, crude but functional, trace ephemeral highlights across the display, usually just the furtive passage of a feral cat or the restless dance of loose plastic sheeting near a high window. Lately, however, those fleeting blips have acquired a chilling resonance. It began near 2 in the morning, a dead hour steeped in stillness. I was perched on a battered metal stool in the office, door ajar against the stuffy air of a warm night. Beyond lay the cavernous dark of the main warehouse floor, bisected by a long corridor, a bleak artery of poured concrete, flanked by shelves groaning under spare parts and boxed tiles, leading towards deeper storage rooms. From that corridor, the sound emerged, distinct, rhythmic footfalls. Tap, tap, tap. My initial thought grasped at mundane explanations. Water finding a loose plank, the groan of contracting metal. But the sound lacked randomness. It possessed a deliberate, measured cadence, the unmistakable signature of someone walking slowly. I rose, my hand instinctively seeking the cold comfort of the flashlight. A knot formed low in my belly, tight and cold, chased by a prickle of sweat at my nape. Perhaps a thief, I reasoned, scavenging for copper wire or tools. Such intrusions weren't unheard of in this neglected zone. Flashlight ignited, I stepped from the office. Its beam carved a path through air thick with dust motes, illuminating stacked pallets like forgotten monuments. I advanced cautiously, gaze fixed on the corridor's receding darkness. The footfall ceased the moment my own began. A tentative query, "Is anyone there?" died in the vast quiet, absorbed by the concrete and steel. No answering shout, no scuffle of hurried retreat, no fleeting shadow swallowed by the gloom. Only the faint, incessant hum of a distant fluorescent bulb underscored the profound silence. My palm grew slick against the flashlight's grip. Stepping deeper, I swept the beam behind boxes, under shelves. Nothing. My heart hammered against my ribs, my own breathing unnaturally loud in the stillness. Back in the office, the monitor offered only ambiguity, a fleeting disruption on a sensor feed near the corridor's entrance, a ghost in the machine, there and gone in a fraction of a second. No discernible shape, just a momentary flicker. I stared, willing the flat line of the sensor graph to betray movement, but it remained stubbornly inert. Eventually, I relegated the incident to the realm of overactive imagination, a trick of acoustics. Yet the unsettling conviction that something was fundamentally wrong lingered like a metallic taste. The second time occurred several nights later, around the same desolate hour. I was completing my perimeter walk, tracing the fence line behind the loading docks, heading back towards the relative safety of the office. As I re-entered the main warehouse space, a different sound broke the night's monotony, a soft scuff against concrete, like a hesitant shoe finding purchase. I froze, straining to hear. Then the tread returned, heavier this time, booted, deliberate. Whipping around, I aimed the flashlight down the familiar corridor. My beam sliced through the interior gloom and found it. A silhouette, stark against the deeper shadows at the corridor's end, utterly motionless facing me. No features were visible, just a solid man-shaped void. My breath hitched, caught somewhere in my throat. I expected it to flee, to react, to challenge me. It did nothing. It simply stood there, an unnerving statue carved from darkness. My pulse roared in my ears. My arms felt strangely distant, numb. A strangled, "Hey!" ripped from my throat, echoing uselessly in the cavernous space. The figure remained, a tear in the fabric of the visible. I took a hesitant step forward, keeping the light trained directly on it. The edges of the shape seemed to fray, to waver like heat haze rising from asphalt. Blinking, I tried to force focus, advancing perhaps 10 paces. By the time I reached the spot where it had stood, there was only empty air, thick with the smell of dust and old machinery. Frantic sweeps of the flashlight revealed nothing. I circled the area, checked behind every stack, peered into every shadowed recess. Vacancy. A coldness, unrelated to the ambient air, seeped into my bones. The urge to bolt, to call the authorities, warred with the paralyzing question, what could I possibly report? A shadow that wasn't there? Reviewing the camera recordings yielded only further confusion. A cascade of brief sensor alerts triggered sequentially along the corridor. Camera 1, then 3, then further down. Too rapid, too precise for any stray animal or explainable phenomenon. It looked like digital noise, static where a solid form should have been. Replaying it offered no clarity, only deepening the mystery. The remainder of that shift was a taut wire of vigilance. I patrolled more frequently, checked and rechecked every external lock. By sunrise, my nerves were shredded ribbons. From that night forward, the warehouse ceased to be merely empty. it became watchful. Whispers of sound became unwelcome companions. Phantom taps on steel shelving, a low grind along unseen walls, and always the footsteps, sometimes light as shed skin on concrete, sometimes heavy as judgment. Venturing from the office felt like stepping onto thin ice. My tentative mention of the occurrences to a day shift foreman earned a dismissive shrug, a platitude about old buildings settling. Their casual jests, "Mind the ghost, Silas," followed by laughter, felt like another layer of isolation, reinforcing the strangeness of my solitary vigils. I attempted to chart the incidents, seeking a pattern in the timing of the footsteps or the camera flickers. None emerged. Midnight, 3 a.m., sometimes entire nights of blessed, unnerving quiet, though these grew rare. Sleep, when it came during the daylight hours, was shallow, haunted by the image of that still, dark figure. One night, desperate to reclaim some semblance of control, I imposed a rigid patrol schedule, hourly sweeps, meticulous checks of every corner. 11 p.m., midnight, all clear, noted meticulously in the log. By 1 a.m., a fragile sense of ease began to return. Perhaps activity was the antidote to imagination. Then, past 1:30, while back in the office chair, the monitor flared. An impossible leap. Sensor 3, deep in the main hallway, triggered mere seconds after Sensor 1 near the south entrance, bypassing Camera 2 entirely. Something had moved with unnatural speed, traversing unseen paths. Adrenaline surged, cold and electric. Grabbing the flashlight, hands trembling, I burst from the office. My pulse hammered in my temples. Entering the main hallway, I immediately heard it. A definitive shuffle from just around the nearest corner. I lunged forward, flashlight beam bouncing erratically. I caught the barest impression, the curve of a shoulder or back, a shape melting into the adjoining corridor. Pursuit was instinctual, my boots hammering a frantic rhythm on the concrete, the sound echoing strangely off the high metal ceiling. Rounding the corner, I confronted nothing. A cul-de-sac formed by stacked sheets of plywood and inert metal pipes. No doors, no windows, no conceivable exit, nowhere to vanish. Yet vanish it had. A tight, nauseating knot formed in my stomach. My breathing came in ragged gasps, legs suddenly weak. I leaned against the plywood stack for support, the flashlight beam trembling in my unsteady hand. Listening intently, I heard only the frantic cadence of my own breath. The impossibility of it struck me with chilling force. The fear was no longer a creeping unease. It was a physical presence, cold and sharp, pressing in from all sides. My arms tingled. Leaving seemed the only sane option, but the stark reality of bills anchored me there. Swallowing the fear, I stayed until morning, saying nothing of this particular encounter. Who would believe it? Madness or fabrication? Those would be the assumed explanations. The weeks that followed blurred into a cycle of escalating dread. Footfalls became bolder, sometimes sounding impossibly close, just behind me, prompting frantic, fruitless turns into empty space. One night, near 3, a violent clang shattered the stillness. A heavy steel pipe, dislodged from a shelf 6 feet high, clattering onto the concrete near distant crates. I sprinted towards the sound, knuckles white on the flashlight. I found the pipe spinning lazily to a halt in the center of an empty aisle. Nothing else stirred. The shelf it came from showed no sign of instability. Something had to have pushed it. Trembling, I retrieved the pipe, replacing it with deliberate care. The subsequent hour was spent in a painstaking, fruitless search of every aisle, every shadow. My cheap webcam, strategically placed in a suspected pathway, yielded only the same frustrating, ephemeral flickers that defied identification. The sensation intensified, a constant pressure at the edge of perception, like unseen eyes boring into my back. Driven to near desperation one shift, I undertook a methodical dissection of the entire warehouse structure. Nearly 2 hours spent peeling back tarps, peering into empty containers, probing behind dormant machinery, shining my light into every neglected corner. The result? Absolute vacancy. No human trace beyond my own boot prints layered in the dust. No bedding, no refuse, no sign of intrusion or clandestine habitation. Yet the feeling persisted throughout the search, a palpable weight raising the hairs on my arms, chilling the sweat that soaked through my shirt. My legs felt shaky, and I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see that tall, dark shape standing silently behind me. Its silence is perhaps the most unnerving aspect. It moves, it displaces objects, its steps echo through the cavernous space, but never a voice, never a cry or whisper, not even a breath caught on the air. A presence defined by its refusal to communicate, content to exist just beyond the threshold of understanding, a question mark etched in shadows and unsettling sounds. Each shift now begins with a familiar clench of nausea in my gut. I flood the main floor with light, activating banks previously left dormant, a futile gesture against the unseen, burning wattage against shadows that seem to deepen regardless. It doesn't halt the footsteps, but it offers a fragile illusion of reduced vulnerability. Thoughts of walking away surface frequently, insistent whispers of self-preservation, but necessity dictates. Bills demand payment, and beneath that, a sliver of defiant curiosity remains. The hope, however faint, of capturing definitive proof on camera, of forcing an answer from the oppressive ambiguity. Until then, there is only the routine overlaid with dread. The rounds, the flickering monitors, the waiting, the dark figure that stood watching before dissolving into nothing. The pipes and boxes inexplicably moved, the cameras registering phantoms. These are the immutable facts of my nocturnal existence. I leave at dawn, muscles knotted with tension, mind frayed, only to return as dusk bleeds across the sky. The warehouse holds its secrets close, and in its vast, echoing spaces, something waits. It watches, it walks, and I, Silas, flashlight clutched tight, continue my vigil in its silent, unsettling company. That is all I know. That, and the chilling certainty that I am not alone here. The instant their hushed tones snagged on the phrase, "Make the problem disappear," the stale coffee air of the diner thickened. This wouldn't be just another Tuesday graveyard shift bleeding into Wednesday dawn. No, tonight plunged deeper into shadows I hadn't fathomed existed beneath the fluorescent hum. It was that dead hour, suspended between yesterday's regrets and tomorrow's anxieties, when the city exhaled only the necessary and the nocturnal predators. 6 months I'd poured burnt coffee at the Beacon Diner, witnessing the parade of human flotsam, sodden revelers seeking grease-laden absolution, truckers chasing caffeine jolts potent enough to peel chrome, restless adolescents drunk on curfew defiance. But the pair slipping through the door at 2:37 a.m. pulsed with a different energy. Their stillness was coiled, their gazes sharp, instruments honed for something other than consuming lukewarm chili. One, tall as a shadow, stretched long, possessed hair, shorn to the scalp, and eyes that swept the room like searchlights. His companion, a block of condensed muscle, had hands that seemed forged to crush, not cradle, a coffee mug. They chose a booth swallowed by the back wall's gloom, maximum distance from the streetlight's indifferent glare. Notepad in hand, I drifted towards them. Evening, welcome to the Beacon. Coffee? The tall one offered a smile that was pure geometry, devoid of warmth. Black, dollface, just coffee. Turning away, the pressure of the stocky one's stare prickled the nape of my neck. An unease, cold and metallic, settled in my gut. While the ancient machine hissed and spat their brew, their voices became a low thrum, urgent whispers slicing through the quiet. Fragments snagged my attention. Has to vanish by sunrise. Thorn won't tolerate another foul up. The current takes everything. Downriver. Forgotten. The ceramic pot nearly slipped from my grasp. Vanish? Thorn? Were they orchestrating what my mind recoiled from naming? I marshaled my breath, willing my hands steady, and delivered the steaming mugs. As the heavy ceramic met the formica, the tall one's words cut off abruptly. Both pairs of eyes snapped to mine. A glacial wave washed down my spine. Had the thin walls betrayed me? Anything else for you tonight? My voice, miraculously, held its line. The muscular one offered a dismissive grunt. The tall one's gaze lingered, analytical, before he murmured, "We're set." Retreating to the counter's relative safety, my heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. Police? Report what? Whispers in a booth. They'd dismiss it as late-night paranoia. I feigned industry, polishing the already gleaming chrome, pretending absorption in the mundane, yet every synapse screamed alert. Nearly an hour crawled by, punctuated by their muted conspiracy. Periodic glances shot my way. I'd counter with feigned fascination for the sugar dispenser's inner workings. At last, they rose. A scatter of bills appeared on the tabletop. As they moved towards the exit, the tall one paused beside the counter, turning. "Have yourself a peaceful night," he purred, the friendliness a thin veneer over ice-cold eyes. "And remember, some things are best unheard, best forgotten, especially for a sharp girl like you." A polar chill seized me. They knew. Outside, they folded themselves into a dark, anonymous sedan idling at the curb. As its taillights bled into the darkness, my trembling fingers scrawled the license plate onto the back of an order ticket. The graphite smeared under my damp palm. The remaining hours were a torment of phantom footsteps and imagined threats behind every arriving customer. Each swing of the door sent jolts of adrenaline through me. By the time dawn painted the sky gray and my relief shuffled in, I was a frayed nerve ending. The police station beckoned, yet a paralyzing fear held me captive. What if their reach extended further than this greasy spoon? In a town this size, shadows often wore badges. Home offered no sanctuary. Sleep was a skittish creature, chased away by the recurring echo of their voices, the phantom glint in their eyes. Get rid of it. Eventually, exhaustion claimed me, only to be shattered by my phone's insistent ringing. It was Jenna, my friend from the local newsroom, her voice crackling with urgency. Ilara, TV, now! Channel 5, you won't believe it! My fingers fumbled the remote, the screen flickering to life. The Chiron screamed, Prominent developer Elias Thorne, found dead in river. My breath hitched. The anchor detailed the discovery of Thorne, owner of seemingly half the town, downstream, his death flagged as deeply suspicious. When his photograph flashed onto the screen, recognition struck like a physical blow. Thorne. The boss they wouldn't disappoint. The whispers coalesced into a horrifying certainty. I'd been privy to the aftermath, the cleanup strategy of a murder, and the executioners knew I held that terrible knowledge. I called the beacon, feigning illness, then spent the day pacing the confines of my small apartment, a prisoner of my own fear. Every creak of the floorboards, every siren in the distance, tightened the knot in my stomach. Evidence? I had none but my own frantic testimony against their calculated calm. And Thorne's influence? Who knew how deep the rot went? As dusk bled through the windows, resolve hardened within me. Passivity was a death sentence. I had to know more. Parking a block away, I approached the beacon under the cloak of early evening. The diner buzzed with an unusual energy. Patrons huddled, dissecting the day's grim news. I slipped through the rear entrance, offering the cook a practiced nod, mimicking the start of a shift. My target, Silas's office. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs. If proof existed, it lay within the battered safe where Silas, bless his trusting, negligent heart, stored the security camera recordings. Empty. Relief washed over me, quickly replaced by adrenaline. The combination, easily gleaned weeks ago, yielded the safe's contents: bundles of cash, mundane invoices, and a plastic box of USB drives, dated meticulously. I snatched the one marked with yesterday's date. Footsteps and voices echoed from the hallway. Panic flared. The supply closet, my only refuge. I squeezed inside, pulling the door almost shut just as the office door swung open. Through the narrow gap, I saw him, Silas, the diner owner, and beside him, the tall man, Corbin. My blood turned to ice water. Your discretion is appreciated, Silas, Corbin said, his voice smooth as river stones. Always useful, having eyes and ears in places like this. Silas emitted a nervous chuckle. Anything to oblige, but that waitress, Ilara. Don't trouble yourself about her, Corbin replied, the casual dismissal sending a fresh wave of terror through me. Consider it handled. They departed. I waited, counting heartbeats, before easing out of the closet's cramped darkness. Silas, involved, and they were coming for me. The USB drive felt searingly hot in my fist as I bolted, sprinting back to my car, rearview mirror reflecting only my own mounting panic. In the relative safety of my apartment, the laptop booted agonizingly slowly. I plugged in the drive. Grainy footage flickered to life. Corbin and Rocco entering, sitting, their hushed exchange obscured by the ambient noise. Then, after they'd gone, the truly damning sequence. Silas emerging from the back. He walked directly to their vacated booth, stooped and picked something up, something small that glinted under the lights before he quickly pocketed it. A knife. Small, perhaps, but potentially stained. He carried it back towards the office. Silas wasn't just aware, he was an accessory, actively concealing evidence. I stared, numb, the pieces clicking into a terrifying mosaic. The police remained a gamble, especially now, knowing Silas, my seemingly harmless boss, was entangled. A sharp rap on my apartment door shattered the silence. "Ilara, it's Silas. Need a word." My heart threatened to implode. How? He shouldn't know I was here. Shouldn't know I'd been back to the diner. "Ilara, I know you went back tonight. We should talk about what you might have seen." His tone was placating, neighborly, but underscored with a steely insistence. He knew. Phone clutched in one hand, USB drive in the other, I scanned the room for a weapon, an escape. The knocking intensified, harder now. "Ilara, please, open up. Let's sort this out." A glint of metal in the lock. Silas must keep masters for employee units. No time. The window. 3 stories down, a dumpster overflowed with bulging plastic bags. A desperate calculus. Probable injury versus certain doom. As the lock clicked open, I inhaled sharply, swung the window wide, and launched myself into the night air. The impact knocked the wind from me, pain lancing up my leg despite the garbage bag's meager cushion. Scrabbling out, Silas's furious shout echoed from the window above. "There! She's making a run for it! Get her!" Pain forgotten, I ran. Ran harder than I knew possible, the small USB drive a talisman against the encroaching darkness. It was everything now. My accusation, my shield, my curse. The darkened streets offered fleeting cover, but my mind raced ahead. Where to go? Who remained untainted, trustworthy? One truth burned clear. The life I knew had evaporated the moment I heard those whispers. I was submerged, caught in a lethal current far deeper than any river, all for the price of a late-night coffee order at a 24-hour diner. "10 years I've wrestled rigs across Brazil, hauling freight through sun and storm, yet one solitary crossroads out in the São Paulo sugarcane labyrinth, still not something cold inside me. It's nothing on a map, just a turn buried deep where the cane grows like a restless green ocean. But there, the world goes mute. My radio dissolves into static hiss. The phone becomes a dead brick in my hand. Even the cicadas, the relentless heartbeat of the countryside, fall silent. It's a vacuum, a held breath in the landscape, and it undoes me a little more each time I pass. My tires first rolled this particular ribbon of asphalt maybe 5 years back. A long haul, mostly 2-lane blacktop, swallowed by cane on either side, endless walls of green, occasionally broken by glimpses of a distant farmhouse, or a dusty track snaking away. That intersection, though, unremarkable on the GPS, just a feeder to remote properties, it announced itself differently. The first time, high noon baked the road. The radio crackled, then surrendered. Expected, out here. Phone signal, flatlined, also common. But the quiet, that was alien. Usually the air thrums, vibrates with insect whine, bird calls, the rustle of unseen things in the cane. That day it was like cotton packed in my ears, a profound deafness. I killed the engine, leaned out into absolute stillness. Nothing stirred. A minute later, I rolled on, and the world's sound rushed back in like a tide. Initially, I filed it under rural eccentricities, signal dead zones, drove the route again, daytime passes, noted the same pattern, the sudden hush, the electronic blackout, then the return to normalcy. Nothing more. Until about a year into that contract, a northbound delivery had me approaching the crossroads near 2 in the morning. The memory clings, fatigue blurring the edges of thought, the internal debate about coffee at the next outpost. The road ahead was a tunnel bored by my headlights through absolute black. Sugarcane stood sentinel, unmoving, untouched by any breeze. My radio, already defeated, was off. My phone, lifeless on the passenger seat. The air felt thick, heavy as wet wool. Then a flicker on the right shoulder. Something pale, upright, human-shaped, draped in white. My first thought, stranded soul, maybe a hitchhiker in trouble. I eased off the accelerator. High beams splashed across the spot, illuminating what looked like a long garment, perhaps a dress, no face visible. And then, faster than a blink, it wasn't there. Not fled, not stumbled into the cane, just gone, vanished. I stomped the brake, the rig shuddering, my heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped bird. I stared into the empty space where it had stood. My eyes burned with tiredness, but conviction settled cold in my gut. I saw something. I pulled onto the shoulder, engine rumbling, grabbed my heavy flashlight. Legs unsteady, I swung down, playing the beam along the roadside, into the dense cane. Leaves whispered where I pushed them aside, but deeper in. Only shadows and stillness. No tracks in the soft dirt. No snagged fabric. No sign anyone had ever been there. After minutes that stretched thin, slick with sweat, I retreated to the cab. Sat there, forcing my breathing to slow, hands trembling on the wheel before I could coax the truck back onto the asphalt. That night, the image burned behind my eyelids. Later, I mentioned it, cautiously, to Marco, another driver who knew these roads. He offered a shrug, a familiar platitude about night driving, tired eyes playing tricks, said he'd driven that stretch countless times, day and night, never seen a thing. His certainty sowed doubt. A reflection? A trick of light on the cane? Exhaustion painting phantoms on the dark canvas? Months drifted by. Then another midnight passage. This time I was wired, hyper-alert. The silence descended again, abrupt and suffocating. The hiss of my own air vents felt unnervingly loud. I scanned the verges, eyes straining. As the turnoff loomed, a flicker of movement snagged my peripheral vision. Left side this time. So fleeting I almost dismissed it, but the impression remained. White fabric, fluttering at the extreme edge of my headlight beams. I gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles white. That familiar jolt, sharp and cold, shot through my chest. No clear figure materialized, just that brief, spectral motion. I didn't slow down, didn't stop. A primal prickling crawled up my neck, skin clammy, pulse hammering a frantic rhythm in my ears. The imperative to keep moving overrode curiosity, overrode everything. Schedule to keep, I told myself, though the lie tasted bitter. After that, I manipulated my runs, tried to hit that intersection only under the forgiving light of day. Shared the story with a few more colleagues. No one else admitted seeing a woman in white. The dead zone, the unnatural quiet. Oh yes, they knew. That, just a quirk of the place, they'd say. Normal for that stretch, maybe. But the apparition felt far from normal. Let me be clear, I'm not wired for ghost tales. My world is diesel, logistics, the tangible weight of cargo. Breakdowns, treacherous roads, sketchy characters at desolate truck stops. That's the job, the expected grit. But this crossroads, it burrowed under my skin, a persistent splinter of unease I couldn't ignore. There was a night, maybe 6 months ago, that truly frayed my nerves. Hauling produce, delayed by accidents back on the main highway. I knew I wouldn't reach the turnoff until 3, maybe later. A thin, persistent rain was falling. Not a deluge, but enough to slick the road and bead on the windshield, distorting the world outside. Wipers swept hypnotic arcs. Oncoming headlights flared, momentarily blinding. Radio surrendered to static. Phone, no bars. As the intersection drew near, that familiar pressure built in my chest. My gaze darted, restless, scanning the towering cane that seemed to press closer in the rain-streaked dark. Everything felt claustrophobic. Rain tapped a nervous rhythm on the glass. My hands ached from gripping the wheel. And then I saw it. A pallid shape, indistinct through the drizzle and gloom, right where I'd seen it the first time. I eased back, heart beginning its frantic gallop. My mouth went bone dry, and at that precise moment, cutting through the engine's thrum and the rain's soft patter, I heard it. A low, soft moan. Faint, yet unmistakable. Like pain, or a distant, sorrowful call, devoid of words. I braked harder, leaning forward, trying to pierce the darkness. Was someone hurt? I cracked the window, letting in the damp, cool air. The sound vanished. Raindrops kissed my arm, raising goose flesh. Hazard lights pulsing, I grabbed the flashlight again. Stepped out into the swaying, dripping cane. Water hitting leaves was the only sound. I swept the beam across the muddy shoulder, into the dense wall of green. Nothing. No footprints distinct from the rain's work, no broken stalks. Then, a soft rustle directly behind me. I spun, flashlight beam stabbing wildly. It illuminated only rows upon rows of wet sugarcane, swaying gently. But the feeling, the undeniable sensation of being watched, raised the hairs on my arms. A knot tightened in my stomach. No figure, nothing tangible, just that heavy, unseen gaze. I scrambled back into the cab, slammed the door, thumbed the lock, sat there for a long minute, heart thrashing, the cab smelling of damp earth, fear, and my own sweat. My shirt clung to my back. I forced the gear stick, forced myself to drive away. The miles that followed felt stretched, infinite. Sleep was elusive for a week after. The moan echoed in my quiet moments. Human, surely. Or something else? I've heard animals in distress. This wasn't that. I mentioned it to another driver, a grizzled veteran. Maybe a local playing tricks, needing help, he suggested. But I looked, thoroughly. And why vanish? Why the silence? Over the following months, I'd probe cautiously at roadside diners, talking to locals. A few nodded knowingly, faces unreadable. That stretch had strange energy, one old-timer offered, adding he never walked it after dark. Another confirmed the dead signals, the quiet, avoided lingering there himself. No concrete stories emerged, no tales of accidents or tragedies tied to the spot. Some offered gentle mockery, spooked by shadows, Renato. Others just shrugged, dismissing it. I didn't press. Turning my runs into some kind of spectral investigation wasn't the goal. I just wanted to do my job, keep my sanity. Still, approaching that place became a ritual of bracing myself. About 2 months back, another late run. Around 1 in the morning, clear sky, stars scattered like diamond dust, a bright moon silvering the landscape. Sometimes moonlight helps, cuts the shadows, so I hoped for an easier passage. Futile hope. Close in, the radio died on cue. Static wash. I killed it preemptively. Felt the familiar clench in my gut. Slowed the rig. This time the movement was dead ahead, right in the center of the intersection. My first thought, stray dog, calf maybe? I prepared to brake hard. Then the form resolved. White, dress-like, featureless. Just a shape defined by its pallor against the dark asphalt. Blood ran cold. What the hell? The words escaped my lips, loud in the suddenly silent cab. And in that instant, it dissolved. Gone. I blinked, scanned frantically. Empty intersection. Motionless cane fields. Only the rumble of my engine, the frantic pulse in my own neck. I didn't stop. Couldn't. Kept rolling, heart refusing to slow. Shirt suddenly damp under my arms. Hands shook on the wheel. I cranked the AC, needing the cold shock to steady myself. Checked my mirrors obsessively. Every roadside shadow leaped, morphed. Minutes later, the phone chimed. A notification. Signal restored. The radio sputtered, finding a distant station. Like crossing an invisible boundary back into the normal world. I don't have a name for it. Ghost, hallucination, atmospheric anomaly, labels feel useless. All I know is the wrongness of that place, the palpable weight in the air. Maybe some old sorrow stains the ground there. Maybe it's just a patch of earth where physics goes sideways. I honestly don't know. But the dread is real. Every time that knot tightens in my stomach, my arms go numb. I find myself strangling the steering wheel, jaw clenched, eyes scanning, waiting, dreading the flash of white. 2 weeks ago, the schedule dictated another midnight transit. Tried to leave earlier, got snagged in highway gridlock. Pulled off the main route already deep into the night. Stopped at a fluorescent-lit gas station 20 miles shy of the crossroads, needing a moment. Checked the tires, fueled up on bitter coffee, exchanged a few words with the attendant. He nodded when I vaguely mentioned the area ahead. Said past the next few hills, things got a bit strange. Heard tales himself, he admitted, hushed voice, glancing around the empty store. Mentioned a figure in white, though he'd never seen it personally. A chill traced its way down my spine at his casual confirmation. I didn't ask for more. Back on the road. Quiet night, stars blazing, the sweet loamy scent of sugarcane thick in the air. GPS showed me closing in. I switched off the radio before the static could claim it. Phone signal flickered. 1 bar, 0, 1, then 0, for good. I slowed, deliberately inhaled, exhaled, kept my eyes locked forward. Palms slick, I wiped one on my jeans, the other white-knuckled on the wheel. Past the weathered sign indicating the turn. Cane pressed close, impenetrable walls on both sides. Road utterly deserted, save for maybe the distant lights of another truck far behind me. Within a quarter mile, the silence slammed down. Engine noise muffled, distant. Cracked the window. No crickets, no wind sighing through the leaves. Nothing. Just a thick, waiting quiet. Reached the intersection. Headlights swept the asphalt, the shoulders. Looked clear, normal. For a heartbeat, I thought. Maybe this time. Then, periphery, left side again. A shape moving with impossible slowness at the very edge of the cane. I snapped my head around. There, the white garment, long, still. My hands started to tremble violently. I hit the brakes, hard. Seatbelt bit into my chest. The figure seemed to melt backward, receding into the dense green. I strained, desperate for detail. A face, confirmation of humanity. Silence reigned. Not even the leaves stirred near it. Sweat beaded on my forehead, trickled into my eyes. I could smell my own fear, sharp and metallic. Waited. 10 seconds. 20. The impulse to get out, to know, warred with a deeper, colder certainty. This time, I wouldn't. Too afraid of what I might find, or what might find me. I jammed the accelerator. The engine roared, tires biting the asphalt. Heart hammered against my ribs, breath loud and ragged in my ears. A minute down the road, the night sounds rushed back in. Insects, the whisper of air over the cab. Radio crackled, alive again. Phone buzzed, service restored. Relief washed over me, potent but incomplete. My arms felt like lead, but I shook them out, forced myself to focus on driving. Checked my mirrors every few seconds for miles. I don't drive that road daily, but it's woven into the fabric of my work. I never know. Sometimes, just the silence, the dead zone, and an empty road. Other times, that fleeting glimpse of white that leaves my nerves frayed for days. Is there unfinished business clinging to that patch of land? Or is it just me, my mind playing tricks? I can't reconcile it, but I can no longer deny the evidence of my own senses, my own fear. Every time that turn approaches, I brace. For the silence, the dead radio, and the possible vigil of the figure in white. I keep driving. Quitting isn't an option, but it weighs on me. A constant, low-grade dread. Headlights catch the turn, stomach twists. I don't talk about it much now. Just keep my eyes forward, grip the wheel, and push through. Years now, it's been like this. Haul the load, pass the spot, pray the shoulder is empty. And if it isn't, keep driving, because I'm not getting out of the truck again. No explanation forthcoming, just the cold certainty of what I've seen, what I've felt. It rattles me still, always. The twin stars ignited in the rearview mirror, a welcome bloom against the oppressive black, and I exhaled relief. A second pair flared beside the first, closer, their glare unnervingly sharp, seeding unease in my gut. When the third set materialized, impossibly near, a certainty colder than the November night gripped me. These were not beacons of salvation, but heralds of a dread my mind struggled to encompass. My name is Ilara. What began as a familiar pilgrimage to my parents' home for the holiday feast dissolved into a phantasmagoria that still splinters my sleep. It should have been straightforward. Me, my husband Julian, our children Leo, 10 years breathing, and Maya, 7 summers old. This ribbon of asphalt connecting metropolises was worn smooth by our previous journeys, though never under such a late moon. Julian's work had chained us until dusk, and by the time we entered the vast, empty corridor of farmland, midnight had long chimed and passed. The children were surrendered to dreams in the back. Julian and I traded shifts at the wheel, battling fatigue with murmured conversation and lukewarm coffee. I was navigating the asphalt river when the engine stuttered, a metallic cough echoing in the sudden silence as the radio's soft melody died. The car faltered, losing momentum despite my foot's pressure on the accelerator. "What's happening?" Julian murmured, surfacing from a shallow doze. A frown etched itself onto my face. "I don't know. Something's wrong. We drifted onto the gravel shoulder, the darkness outside absolute. A velvet void, swallowing sound and light. Julian twisted the key. The engine responded with only a pathetic, rhythmic click. "Damn it!" he breathed, fishing out his phone. The screen remained blank. Nothing. Not a whisper of signal. Anxiety coiled low in my belly. Stranded, miles from any town. Cut off. The highway unspooled in either direction. A deserted track vanishing into the immense night. It was then I saw them. The first distant glimmers. Nascent star swimming towards us from the receding horizon. Relief, potent and swift, washed through me. Someone was coming. We wouldn't be marooned. "Look," I urged Julian, pointing. "Headlights. Maybe they can help." We stepped out, silhouettes against the faint starlight, waving our arms as the vehicle approached. But as it drew nearer, a dissonance registered. The beams were too piercing, mounted strangely high, and the vehicle itself swayed, performing a subtle, drunken waltz on the straight road. The knot in my stomach tightened, cinching off the earlier relief. This wasn't right. Just as it seemed poised to stop, the vehicle veered violently, accelerating past us with a low hum that faded swiftly into the night. "What in God's name?" Julian stared after it, bewildered. Before I could formulate a reply, another set of lights approached, this time from the opposite direction. A conventional sedan slowed, its window descending to reveal an elderly man, his face etched with worry. "Everything all right, folks?" "Our car died," I explained, the words tumbling out. "Do you have a signal? Could we possibly use your phone?" His expression shifted, concern evaporating, replaced by stark fear. "You need to leave, right now." "What? Why?" Julian stepped closer, perplexed. The man's gaze flickered nervously down the road we'd just traveled. "There's talk. Things on this stretch after dark. Folks vanish. Strange lights. You don't want to be here. Not now." A tremor traced its way down my spine. "What kind of things?" His window was already gliding shut. "Sorry, can't linger. Good luck." He gunned the engine, tires spitting gravel, and fled, leaving us enveloped once more by the silence and the encroaching dread. Julian and I exchanged a look, disbelief warring with a rising tide of fear. What had he meant, and what were we supposed to do? That's when the third set of lights appeared, not distant, but suddenly there, far too close, burning holes in the darkness, and they were coming directly at us, accelerating with terrifying speed. "Get in!" I shrieked, wrenching the door open, tumbling inside. Julian scrambled in beside me, just as the phantom vehicle roared past, missing our stalled car by a breath. The children jolted awake, voices thick with sleep and sudden fright. "Mom? Dad? What is it?" Leo asked, his tone small, lost in the dark interior. "It's okay, sweetie," I lied, forcing calm into my voice. "Just car trouble. Everything's fine." Even as I spoke, more lights bloomed in the distance behind us. Not one or two pairs, but a multitude. A constellation of malevolent eyes converging on our position. "Julian," I whispered, my voice trembling. "We have to get out of here." He nodded, his face a pale mask in the dim glow of the dashboard. Trying again, he turned the key. I watched the approaching lights, mesmerized by terror. They were closer now, close enough to discern their unnatural aspect. Some rode impossibly high, others skimmed the pavement. Their movement was wrong, a fluid, predatory weaving that defied mechanical explanation. The engine sputtered, choked, then miraculously caught, roaring into defiant life. Julian wasted no time. He slammed the gear stick into drive, tires screaming as we lurched back onto the highway. "Mommy, I'm scared," Maya whimpered from the back. "It's okay, baby," I soothed, reaching back, my fingers finding her small hand. "We're going to be okay." But the rearview mirror reflected my lie. The lights pursued, gaining relentlessly, and now, fleetingly, I could perceive shapes within the darkness between the beams. Vast, ill-defined forms, loping alongside their luminous escorts. Julian pushed the engine, the needle climbing, the car groaning under the strain, but it wasn't enough. The lights surged closer. With them came a sound, a low, resonant thrum that seemed to vibrate deep within my bones, shaking my teeth. "What are they?" Leo breathed, his face pressed tight against the rear window. "Don't look," I snapped, sharper than intended. "Just keep your eyes closed." The thrum intensified, swallowing the engine's whine, the rush of wind. It became the only reality, an omnipresent vibration that made my head swim, my vision pulse. Then, abruptly, utter blackness. The dashboard lights, our headlights, the pursuing glare, all extinguished simultaneously. We were suspended in a perfect, lightless void. Silence reigned for a heartbeat. Then, a blinding radiance erupted from above, flooding the car's interior, searing my retinas through closed lids. I felt an impossible lightness, the car lifting, detaching from the road. The children screamed. Julian yelled words lost in the deafening hum that now filled everything. Pressure built in my ears, my chest tightening, breath catching in my throat. Just as consciousness threatened to fray, it stopped. The light, the sound, the sensation of ascent vanished. Slowly, I opened my eyes, blinking against the residual glare. We were back on the shoulder, the engine idling smoothly. The highway stretched before us, vacant and ordinary under the indifferent stars. "Everyone, okay?" I managed, my voice a dry rasp. Shaky affirmations came from Julian, from Leo and Maya. Physically unharmed, yet profoundly altered. "What was that?" Leo asked, his voice hushed. "Was it aliens?" "I don't know, honey," I answered, the honesty heavy. "I truly don't know." We drove the remaining miles in a strained silence, every approaching headlight causing a collective flinch. Nothing further disturbed the pre-dawn stillness. We reached my parents' house as the first tentative rays of sun painted the horizon, numb with exhaustion and bewildered terror. In the ensuing days, we circled the event, trying to grasp its edges. Online searches yielded whispers, local legends about that desolate highway, but nothing mirroring the sheer, visceral horror we'd endured. Reporting it felt futile. Who would lend credence to such a tale without a shred of proof? The memory, however, became an unwelcome resident. Nightmares plagued the children for months. Julian and I developed an aversion to night driving. The simple act of glancing in the rearview mirror after dark became fraught with remembered panic. Years have spun past, the phenomenon never repeated. Yet sometimes, driving alone on a lightless road, a strange configuration of lights will appear in my mirror, and instantly I am back on that highway, the thrum vibrating in my marrow, the cold certainty of pursuit gripping my heart. What intercepted our journey that night? Extraterrestrial visitors? Beings from a parallel dimension? Or something utterly other, nameless and incomprehensible? The question remains unanswered, likely forever. But I know this: the night is not empty. It holds unseen currents, watchers in the shadows, entities that occasionally brush against our perceived reality. And when they do, all that remains is to hold fast and hope for the dawn. So, the next time you find yourself on a lonely road, swallowed by darkness, pay heed to the lights that bloom behind you. They might be carrying more than just another traveler passing in the night. The engine choked, a final, rattling exhalation, and then silence descended like a shroud. I drifted onto the gravel shoulder, the car a suddenly inert shell on a ribbon of asphalt unwinding through forgotten country. Isolation clamped down. Miles stitched me away from anywhere resembling civilization, tethered to this useless bulk of steel, the phone in my hand displaying only mocking emptiness. No signal. This mechanical failure, I sensed with a prickling dread, was merely the overture. My name is Elias. What follows is not a tale easily told, nor easily believed. How a mundane journey towards a cousin's wedding warped into a desperate scramble against an evil thriving in the pastoral shadows. The drive itself should have been unremarkable, a shortcut tracing the contours of rolling hills, dense woodlands, and the occasional farmhouse slumbering in the fields. But as the sun bled towards the horizon, painting the sky in bruised purples and oranges, the landscape's charm curdled, replaced by an unnerving stillness that swallowed sound. Hours had dissolved behind me when the car first faltered. A frantic pulse flickered on the dashboard, check engine, followed by convulsive lurches. I wrestled it to the shoulder just as the last vestiges of power drained away. Lifting the hood revealed a familiar labyrinth. The engine's innards remained a cryptic sculpture of grease and metal, utterly defiant of my layman's gaze. Mechanics were a language I'd never learned. With a sigh that feathered into the cooling air, I confirmed the phone's uselessness. Help would require legwork, the old-fashioned kind. Far down the road, a solitary point of light glimmered, a farmhouse, perhaps half a mile distant. Not ideal, but the only beacon in the encroaching dark. As I began to walk, the silence pressed in, absolute. No thrum of insects, no owl's query, only the crisp percussion of my own footsteps on the gravel and the rasp of my breath. The farmhouse solidified as I drew nearer, weathered clapboard siding, a porch roof sagging slightly with age. Lights glowed warmly within, and the silhouette of an old pickup truck stood nearby, occupied. My rehearsed plea for assistance died on my lips as I reached the porch. Muffled voices seeped through the walls, imbued with an urgency that arrested my movement. "We cannot sustain this," a woman's voice, tight with strain. "Someone will discover." "Nobody discovers," a man's rough timbre interrupted. "We take precautions, always." "But the risk." Her words fractured as my boot clumsily struck an unseen, empty can. Inside, the voices ceased abruptly. I froze, breath held captive, acutely aware of my transgression. an unwilling ear to secrets not meant for the open air. The front door creaked open. A tall man, broad across the shoulders, filled the frame. His face was topography carved by time and harsh weather, his eyes like chips of flint, assessing me with unnerving stillness. "Something you need?" His tone offered no welcome. I forced moisture into my dry mouth, stretching my lips into what I hoped was an apologetic smile. Deeply sorry to impose, my car gave out just back down the road. Wondered if I might trouble you to use your telephone, call for a tow truck. He held my gaze for a pregnant pause, then flicked a glance over his shoulder towards the interior shadows. When his eyes returned to mine, a subtle shift, a flicker of something cold and calculating, sent an involuntary tremor down my spine. "Certainly," he replied, his voice suddenly smooth, almost genial. "Can't have you stranded out here in the night. Come inside." Every nerve ending screamed caution, urged retreat, but logic dictated otherwise. I needed assistance. This was the sole possibility. Stepping over the threshold, the floorboards groaned a dissonant welcome beneath my weight. The farmhouse interior was dim, cluttered, the air heavy with an indefinable scent, sickly sweet and underpinned by a current of decay. A woman materialized at a kitchen doorway, nervously wiping her hands on a faded cloth. Her smile was a brittle thing, quickly drawn and just as quickly vanished, never reaching her eyes. "Telephone's through here." The man, Silas I'd later learn his name was, indicated the kitchen, gesturing me forward. As I passed the woman, Elspeth, I saw the bloodless white of her knuckles gripping the cloth. Her gaze met mine for a fleeting instant, revealing a starkness that looked unnervingly like terror. The kitchen was cavernous, dominated by an archaic wood-burning stove. Yet my attention snagged on the cellar door, thick, reinforced wood, bound shut with an alarming array of bolts and padlocks, facing outwards. An architectural anomaly designed not to keep things out, but to keep something in. Silas pointed to an ancient rotary phone mounted on the wall. "Help yourself. Got the number for roadside?" I didn't, but the operator would suffice. Lifting the heavy receiver, I registered Silas positioning himself subtly between me and the only visible exit. Elspeth hovered nearby, her eyes darting from me to the locked cellar door and back again. I dialed 0, a silent prayer accompanying the motion. Instead of a dial tone, a flat, lifeless hum met my ear. Utterly dead. "Problem?" Silas inquired, his calmness unnervingly absolute. Slowly, I replaced the receiver. My thoughts scrambled for purchase. "Ah, yes. Seems the line is out." He nodded, unsurprised. Happens. Weather moves through. But the night outside was placid, clear. No storm had passed. "Look," I began, striving to keep my voice level, betraying none of the rising panic. "I appreciate the thought, but perhaps I should just walk on. Find a service station." Silas's expression hardened, the genial mask dissolving. "Wouldn't recommend that. Not safe. Wandering these roads after dark. Best you stay put. We have a spare room. I'll run you into town come morning." It wasn't an offer. It was a statement delivered with the weight of finality. His posture, blocking the way, underscored the lack of choice. "That's extremely generous," I managed, mind racing for an escape route, any plausible excuse. But I really must press on. My cousin's wedding is tomorrow, and I wouldn't want to miss. My words were severed by a sound that turned my blood to ice. A thin, muffled shriek tore upwards from the floorboards. From the cellar, Elspeth emitted a tiny, choked gasp, instantly suppressed. Silas's face contorted into a dark mask of fury. "Now see what you've precipitated," he snarled, all pretense incinerated. "You've disturbed our other guest." My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat threatening to burst free. An unshakable certainty settled over me. Leaving this house now was imperative, or I would never leave at all. I feinted left, then lunged right, a desperate bid to slip past him. He moved with a speed that belied his bulk. His hand clamped onto my arm like a steel trap, and he hurled me against the wall with bone-jarring impact. "Elspeth!" he barked. "The cord!" I fought with primal instinct, kicking, twisting, clawing, but his strength was overwhelming. Within moments he had me pinned, my cheek pressed hard against the grimy linoleum floor. "Should have kept to the road," he muttered, yanking my hands behind my back, securing them tightly. "No matter, you'll be keeping our friend company shortly." As he began to haul me towards the cellar door, my gaze snagged on Elspeth's face. Tears tracked through the grime on her cheeks, but her body remained inert, offering no resistance, no aid. Whatever waited beyond that formidable door, she had reconciled herself to its horrors long ago, a mirror reflecting a long-shattered hope. The bolts rasped open, one after another. The heavy door swung inwards. A wave of putrescence washed over me, an indescribable miasma of old blood, waste, and sheer despair. As Silas started dragging me down the unseen stairs into the waiting blackness, I squeezed my eyes shut, convinced I was descending into hell's antechamber. How long I remained in that subterranean darkness, I cannot say. Days bled into an amorphous passage of time, punctuated only by the arrival of new guests and the chilling vacancies left by others. The atrocities witnessed, the suffering endured. Language falters before such depths, yet amidst the abject horror, the ember of survival never fully extinguished. Then one day, chaos erupted. A newly captured soul, fighting with the ferocity of the damned, inflicted an injury upon Silas. In the ensuing pandemonium, a sliver of opportunity appeared. The specifics of my escape are a brutal tapestry I choose not to unravel here. Know only that it was neither swift nor without cost, but I emerged. Now, sharing this account, I anticipate disbelief. The narrative strains credulity, sounds like fevered fiction. I assure you, it is etched in truth. And that farmhouse still squats on its patch of forsaken earth, nestled beside some forgotten road. Silas and Elspeth endure, their grim harvest continuing amongst unwary travelers. So, should you ever find yourself broken down, swallowed by the nowhere places, exercise profound caution before seeking refuge. You cannot fathom the particular hell you might stumble into. And once inside, escape may demand a price beyond reckoning. "6 months adrift in this monolithic Art Deco spire, anchored mid-city. My initiation involved passage through its cavernous lobby, a space defined by geometric austerity etched into polished obsidian floors and the rigid verticality of carved marble columns. Voices echoed that first day, murmuring of the building's pedigree, its particular character. They gestured towards the elevators, bronze filigree cages, garden-shadowed interiors, relics whispered to be part of its 1930s soul. I offered nods, polite concurrence, yet beneath my ribs, a peculiar density settled, a weight I couldn't name, nascent job anxieties perhaps, or merely the structure's oppressive atmosphere. I resolved to ignore it, to dissolve into the rhythm of routine. Within a fortnight, the pattern emerged. Elias, the last sentinel departing the floor. My duties, wrestling with serpentine financial ledgers, frequently bled past twilight. Thus, I navigated the elongated corridors solo, the profound silence occasionally punctuated by the electric hum of overhead fixtures, a sound that seemed to thicken the air. Walls felt too close, perspective subtly warping under fatigue. Just exhaustion, I reasoned, yet each solitary trek towards the lift sent an unsettling prickle across my skin. The elevator itself is a time-worn contraption, a collapsible gate, wrought iron demanding a deliberate pull before entry. Inside, a burnished brass lever dictates trajectory, a vestige of manual operation grafted onto its modern electric heart. A faint bouquet lingers within, machine oil and metallic tang, sometimes undercut by a stale, indeterminate mustiness, like damp wool or forgotten earth. I disliked that scent intensely. Illumination is meager, bulbs flickering with the car's hesitant motion. Dark, tessellated tiles underfoot mirror the scratched steel panels lining the walls, surfaces reflecting warped, fleeting images. One evening, the clock nearing 9, I gathered my belongings and aimed for the descent. Corridor lights had already dimmed to their nocturnal amber glow. Approaching the elevator bank, I halted. The gate to one car stood ajar. A triviality, yet certainty, pricked me. I'd secured it upon arrival that morning. A slow scan revealed only emptiness, the gleam of a lone bulb reflected on the polished floor stretching into shadow. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my ribs. Drawing a steadying breath, I stepped across the threshold, pulled the gate shut with a metallic rasp, and engaged the lever for the lobby. The car jolted downwards, lights flaring once before settling into their usual, hesitant glow. All proceeded uneventfully until the 5th floor. It stopped. The gate remained sealed. The car simply paused, suspended. I hadn't selected 5. My finger jabbed the lobby designation again. The elevator remained inert, humming its low mechanical thrum. Seconds stretched, taut and silent, before, without preamble, it resumed its journey. No gate opened on 5, no hesitation. It simply continued its plunge to the ground floor after that baffling interlude. I strode out, affecting calm, though my palms were slick, my breath tight in my chest. The lobby sentinel, engrossed at his console, received only a curt wave as I pushed through the revolving doors. A glitch, I told myself. An old machine's caprice. The following day's labor stretched later still. 10 o'clock found me locking my office door, the corridor swallowed by an immense quietude, broken only by the echo of my own footfalls. Reaching the elevator alcove, I heard it, a soft, metallic clank from within the shaft, the ghost of movement. I pressed the call button. The sound ceased abruptly. The car arrived, gate sighing open, empty. I stepped inside, selected the lobby, and the ascent began. Silence reigned until the 6th floor. It stopped. This time, the gate slid open of its own accord, revealing a corridor plunged into absolute darkness. Not a single light burned. I leaned forward, peering into the void. "Anyone there?" My whisper felt absorbed by the blackness. No reply. I pressed the lobby button again. Nothing. A frantic pulse hammered in my neck. The gate hung open, the car stubbornly fixed on 6. After an eternity condensed into seconds, the gate slid shut with unnerving autonomy, and the elevator resumed its downward course. Reaching the lobby, I found the guard stationed as usual. His greeting met a terse nod. Words failed me. My stomach felt knotted, throat parched. Outside, the city's electric brilliance and a cool night breeze offered a fragile anchor to normalcy. Stress, I insisted internally. Antiquated elevators are prone to eccentricities. I resolved to keep silent, lest colleagues or superiors perceive instability. 2 weeks drifted by. An urgent report chained me to my desk past 8 one evening. Stepping out for a soda from the machine situated at the corridor's far end, I heard it. A distinct rattling near the elevator bank, the unmistakable sound of the gate being manipulated. Glancing down the long, shadowed hallway, I saw a shape. Tall, indistinct, cloaked in what seemed a dark suit, crowned by a hat. Frozen, I watched as the figure appeared to slide the gate open, step within, and pull it shut. I moved closer, footsteps quickening, but by the time I reached the elevator, the indicator showed it resting, unmoving, on my floor. I summoned it. The gate opened onto vacancy. The overhead bulb gave a convulsive flicker. A chill traced a path down my spine. Dragging a hand across my face, I sought composure, retrieved my soda, and retreated to the relative sanctuary of my office. Departure waited until nearly 9:30, courage painstakingly reassembled. In the ensuing days, I cultivated an aversion to the elevator, opting for the stairwell whenever venturing outside standard business hours. Yet its use remained periodically unavoidable. My office resided on the 8th floor, and transporting cumbersome archive boxes via 8 flights of stairs proved punishing. One evening necessitated conveying several such boxes to the basement storage. Dread coiled in my gut, but practicality won. I loaded the files onto a small trolley, maneuvered it into the elevator's cramped interior, and pressed the button marked B. The descent was accompanied by a low groan from the machinery, the lights flickering with greater insistence than usual. By the time we reached the subterranean level, beads of sweat dotted my forehead. The basement itself is a realm of perpetual twilight, a single corridor punctuated by sparse overhead bulbs, leading to the storage chamber at its terminus. The air hangs thick with the scent of mildew and aged paint. I deposited the boxes, secured the storage room lock, and turned back towards the lift. As I approached, a new sound reached me. Distinct footsteps, seemingly ascending or descending the metal framework. Within the elevator shaft itself, echoing strangely in the confined space. I stood motionless, listening intently. The sound ceased. The corridor light above me pulsed erratically. I pulled the gate open, empty. Stepping inside, I selected 8, watching the gate lattice shut. The car began its ascent. Roughly halfway to the ground floor, it shuddered violently. My stomach plunged. The elevator slowed, nearly stopping, then lurched upwards again. I kept my gaze fixed on the small, illuminated floor indicator. It bypassed the lobby level, continuing its climb. At the 4th floor, it halted once more. The gate slid open. The hallway beyond was dark, abandoned for the night. Then, a whisper, faint and sibilant, brushed the edge of hearing. Not words precisely, more like soft rhythmic breathing or hushed, incoherent muttering. My skin tingled, heart pounding a heavy tattoo against my ribs. I jammed the button for 8 repeatedly. The gate closed and the car resumed its upward journey. Emerging onto my floor, I hurried to my office, locked the door, and sank into my chair, hands trembling. Paperwork lay spread before me, yet my mind replayed the phantom whispers, over and over. The next morning, I sought out the building manager, maintaining a carefully casual tone. Were there any known mechanical issues with the main elevator? He assured me everything was functioning normally. He conceded its age, acknowledged potential noisiness, but offered no mention of spontaneous stops or inexplicable acoustics. I didn't press further, simply nodded and retreated. That evening found me solitary once more. The city glittered beyond the windows, a vibrant contrast to the lifeless, stuffy air within the office. I decided against tempting fate further, packed my satchel, and walked towards the lift, consciously striving for calm. Palms damp, shoulders rigid. Reaching the elevator alcove, I cast a final glance down the empty corridor, the buzzing overheads the only sound. I pulled the gate open, stepped inside, pressed for the lobby. The car gave its customary jerk, then began to descend, smoothly this time, until the 6th floor. It stopped, unbidden. The gate slid open onto a dimly lit hallway, vacant. My breath caught. I took a tentative step forward, just to peer out, my shoe brushing the threshold. Instantly, the hallway lights extinguished. I heard the distinct click of a switch. My heart leapt violently. Scrambling back into the car, I hammered the lobby button. The gate began to close, sluggishly, as if encountering resistance, before finally latching shut. The elevator descended one more level, stopping again at the 5th floor. Here the corridor lights were on. I scanned the empty space, but from behind a closed office door nearby, a faint scraping sound emanated. I remained rooted inside the elevator, finger persistently depressing the lobby button, hands shaking uncontrollably. Finally, the car moved, delivering me to the ground floor. I bolted out. The security desk was unoccupied. Not waiting, I shoved through the heavy glass doors onto the sidewalk. The cool night air, a welcome shock. My knees felt unsteady. I stood for a moment, gulping air, then turned to look back at the lobby. Still empty. The guard, presumably, was making rounds or in the restroom. The urge to confide vanished. I craved only the sanctuary of home. Weeks spun into a disquieting rhythm. Sometimes the elevator performed flawlessly, prompting doubts about my own perceptions. Other times, it resumed its phantom stops on deserted floors, accompanied by noises that defied logical explanation. Clicks, sighs, the faint drag of something unseen. I attempted an audio recording on my phone one night, hoping to capture evidence, but playback yielded only white noise, a hiss of static. Tellingly, on that particular night, the elevator behaved with perfect mechanical obedience. It felt calculated, as though the building itself were toying with me. Then came a Friday evening. An urgent client email demanded my presence until 7. Not excessively late, I reasoned, feeling a modicum of safety. Gathering my coat and bag, I walked towards the lift. As I approached, the air grew suddenly, noticeably colder. A tingling sensation traced my arms. I pressed the call button. The elevator arrived promptly. Stepping inside, My gaze caught a reflection in the polished steel panel opposite, the distinct silhouette of someone standing directly behind me, wearing a hat. I spun around. Nothing. The car was empty. I stood frozen, heart seizing. The gate began to close, unprompted. Lunging for the control panel, I stabbed the lobby button, praying for an uninterrupted descent. The car passed 7, then 6, then 5, the indicator light progressing smoothly. I allowed myself a shallow exhale. Perhaps this time. Abruptly, between the 3rd and 2nd floors, the elevator jolted to a halt. The lights flickered violently, then died, plunging me into absolute suffocating darkness. Only the ragged sound of my own breathing filled the void. Fumbling for my phone, fingers slick with sweat, chest constricting, I activated its flashlight. The narrow beam swept across the interior. Empty. Gate securely closed. I slammed the emergency call button. A motor whirred somewhere distant and the lights flickered back to life. The elevator resumed its downward journey, stopping correctly at the lobby. As the gate retracted, I practically fell out. The security guard stood near his desk, sipping coffee. Elevator stuck for a second. I managed, voice strained. He looked mildly surprised, offered an apology for not noticing, and promised to inform the manager. I nodded numbly and fled, collapsing into my car, waiting for my breathing to steady, my heart to cease its frantic pounding against my ribs. My shirt clung, damp with perspiration. The weekend offered no respite. The image of that reflected hat replayed relentlessly. Quitting seemed the only sane option, yet financial necessity tethered me. Monday morning, I arrived early, making another attempt with the building manager. Had anyone, reported unusual occurrences? He shook his head, regarding me with faint concern, asking if I was feeling all right. I manufactured a smile, assured him I was fine, and proceeded to my office, shadowed by a pervasive unease that clung throughout the day. That evening, I departed precisely at 5, swallowed by the departing throng, deliberately avoiding solitude. A period of calm followed, a fragile truce, but deadlines, relentless and indifferent, mounted once more. Days later, 8 o'clock found me still at my desk. As I reached for my coat, footsteps echoed in the hallway outside my door. Heavy tread, rhythmic pacing. Assuming a colleague, I peered out. The corridor stretched empty, yet the sound persisted. My chest tightened. Remaining in the office felt suddenly unbearable. Switching off the lights, locking the door, I followed the corridor towards the elevator bank. Close to my ear, a faint whisper, like intimate breath. I spun around, phone light slashing the air. Nothing. I quickened my pace. Reaching the elevator, I heard the gate clank, open, seemingly of its own volition. Leaning forward cautiously, I saw the car waiting, perfectly aligned with the floor, as if summoned. The stairs beckoned, 8 long flights down, but exhaustion weighed heavily. My bag felt leaden. Hesitantly, I stepped inside, pressing the lobby button. The gate snapped shut with metallic finality. The ride commenced in silence. Approaching the 7th floor, the car slowed perceptibly, then, unexpectedly, accelerated again. At the 5th floor, it stopped. The gate slid open. The hallway beyond lay dark. The single bulb inside the elevator flickered, and in that momentary strobe, I saw it, the dark curve of a hat brim just visible at the edge of the open gateway. A gasp escaped me as I stumbled backward. Then, with startling force, the elevator gate slammed shut. and the car continued its descent. Emerging into the lobby felt like surfacing from deep water. Relief washed over me, potent but fleeting. A curt nod to the guard, and I was outside, leaning against the cool stone facade, drawing deep breaths of evening air. My legs trembled. Enough. This was enough. A plan formed. I would speak to my supervisor, insist on adjusted hours, anything to avoid these late-night vigils. Leaving with the crowd was the only way. I tried to steady myself, looking up at the building's intricate Art Deco detailing. Once perceived as beautiful, it now radiated only profound dread. My watch read 8:15 p.m. The street was thinning, headlights slicing the pavement in ephemeral bursts. The stark realization hit me. I possessed no tangible proof. No security footage would reveal a hatted man vanishing into an empty lift car. No one else voiced similar experiences. Perhaps they existed, these other witnesses, shrouded in silence. Perhaps they simply never lingered long enough after dusk. I couldn't know. All I knew was the persistent sensation of being watched whenever I rode that elevator alone. The whispers that defied source or meaning. The gates opening onto floors steeped in expectant emptiness. The fleeting glimpses of a figure perpetually dissolving upon inspection. The thought of quitting remains a constant companion, yet here I stay, hoping, perhaps futilely, for management to finally modernize the lift, or for our offices to relocate entirely. Until then, avoidance is my strategy. If lateness becomes unavoidable, I linger in my office, a prisoner of paperwork, until the sound of a departing colleague offers safe passage. It's an imperfect defense, but the only one I have. I cannot substantiate my fear, and doubt logic would prevail even if I could. So it stands. I inhabit a venerable Art Deco tower, served by an antiquated elevator with a mind, or perhaps a ghost, of its own. It journeys through the night unbidden. It pauses on levels no one selects. Occasionally, I perceive the phantom curve of a hat brim, or catch whispers like static on the air. No one else confesses to seeing, to hearing, but the experiences are etched into my reality, undeniable. As long as this place remains my workplace, my vigilance remains absolute. Each time I step across that threshold, into that metallic cage, my breath will grow shallow. My heart will beat its frantic rhythm against my ribs. My eyes will fix on the gate, perpetually braced for its next inexplicable opening onto some vacant, waiting floor. And I will force myself not to contemplate what, precisely, I might finally see if it does.